Hey, it's Clip of the Day time where Buck Sexton and I pick out the best hot take, the most fun that we had for all of you to be able to experience on the show.
That's right, and this segment is brought to you by ExpressVPN, which is the virtual private network that we trust to protect our online data.
When I use ExpressVPN, the big tech companies can't see my IP address, my identity is anonymized, and my data's encrypted. That gives me the absolute maximum protection.
And what I like most is how easy it is to use. All you do is download the app. But first you got to set up your account, right? So go to expressvpn.com/patriot. You'll get an extra 3 months free, or you can click on the link.
That's expressvpn.com/patriot. And now it's time for the clip of the day.
We have been talking about how to get back to normal and when we're going to start to see some of the restrictions get reined back in. In other words, LA now is saying, hey, you're going to have the COVID vaccine to go to bars and restaurants and gyms and movie theaters and everything else. Well, I got to give credit here. Down in the great state of Louisiana, LSU fans, uniquely all over the South, they were requiring a COVID vaccine or a negative COVID test to go watch the LSU Tigers play. They now, Buck, are rescinding the COVID vaccine mandate and also a requirement of a negative COVID test. This is big news because this is the first time that I can remember that anybody out there has started to dial back the restrictions that they have put in place. And by the way, this is important too because you won't hear this very many places. The South has seen all over COVID cases plummet since college football, NFL, and high school season started. But Louisiana now, at least as a positive in this context, the number of COVID cases has plummeted to such an extent that Louisiana is right now almost the lowest in the entire country, down with Florida. Buck, the numbers keep going down in Florida. We talked about this the other day. Only Hawaii, California, and Connecticut have a lower COVID rate than Florida right now.
You know what they're saying, right? Instead of admitting that Ron DeSantis was not engaged in mass human sacrifice and wasn't somehow also running policy in Oregon and Alaska and other states that have seen very big surges, they're saying, well, it burned through. His policies were so reckless, and now there's no one left. It's like all the casualties from the battle have already been taken. This is the left's response to this.
That's their
instead,
yes.
Right, and that's their argument. Instead of just saying, oh, it's a seasonal virus and it moves through places and it goes after people based upon, at some level, what time of year you're talking about, which is what we already saw happen last year. But, it's amazing, Clay, to watch how Rush, you said the drive-bys?
Yes.
The drive-by attitude, the drive-by action of the media on COVID, I don't know if there's ever been anything else like this.
I'm
it's
about
just
to
2
pop it
weeks,
out.
just 2 weeks. Forget about what I said a month ago, just 2 weeks. Every time with a political agenda behind what they're reporting on, where they're reporting on it. It's crazy.
You would think, based on the way the media covered Florida, that everyone in the state of Florida is dead. Remember that DeSantis ad that we played that was so bad?
Was amazing. It was amazing.
I'm not even kidding. You would think, what percentage of the American public knows that Florida right now has the fourth lowest COVID infection rate in the entire country? And by the way, by the end of the weekend, they might be down to the lowest, right? The way that these numbers are trending down. I think there's hardly anybody that knows that. And again, this is why I get so angry. Because one thing, if people have different opinions, right? There are a lot of people who think that you and I are crazy, Buck. They're crazy themselves, I think, but they hear us and they disagree with some of our opinions. I can respect that, right? But when there's factual data that demonstrates what the truth is, and that is not shared, and it creates way more tumult, when it creates way more stress, when there are parents that are terrified for their kids, and if they just had the real data, they would, I think, be so much more comfortable. The anxiety level. What's the parent thing? Is it Munchausen syndrome? Am I mispronouncing?
Munchausen by proxy?
Yeah. And tell me if I'm wrong on this, Buck, because I didn't do my my research before I just brought it up. But my understanding of Munchausen syndrome, which I'm probably mispronouncing, is you basically become convinced that your kid is always sick, right? That's a parent that takes, and correct me if I'm wrong on that. Is that roughly correct?
It's a psychological disorder where somebody always thinks that they are, they always pretend to be sick or produce, illness symptoms, say that they're illness symptoms in themselves, right? So it's like the perpetual illness psychological disorder. And
some parents transfer that to their children. That's what I think we're seeing on a mass level all over this country.
I think Fauci has done that to America, essentially.
That's right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
he can't. Like, I couldn't get out of bed if I were Fauci right now, and I created this.
See, I know. I've known all along who Fauci is because I've experienced that thing where you go to a doctor, and there are some doctors out there who are very soda straw in their view. They look at certain things, and if you go in for a checkup, or if let's say you have a sports injury, they're just going to tell you, well, you can't run because it'll destroy your knees. You can't lift weights because you'll throw out your back. You can't, they'll go down all these things. And you say, yeah, okay, but I'm actually not trying to live in a cocoon my whole life and avoid any injury or, sensory experience. How many times, you go to the doctor and they say, avoid red meat. And, they'll ask you, all kinds of questions, cut down on butter, all these things. Okay, doc, thanks. Imagine if instead of you getting advice from a over-anxious doctor you go to see, that person was able to dictate every minute detail of your life. No drinking, no caffeine, no red meat, better get 8 hours. How many people that work really hard and stuff are getting over 8 hours of sleep a night, by the way? I know very, very few, right? You go through this whole list. Fauci has done that to America with COVID.